Makiru Emba Nebajer Makiru Emba Nebajer Makiru Emba Nebajer Makiru Emba Nebajer. So, Udja, greetings everyone, as we continue in the second public discourse on the book of the Am Duat. And there will be, just so everyone will know, that this class will be closed at the end of the next lecture. Not this one, there will be one more, and the class will be closed. So if you want to be privy to the closed sessions, which will be the vast majority of the lecture series, then send an email to me at SEHU@gmail.com, letting me know that you want access to the discourses. And we're closing it because of the texture and the nature of this teaching. Recall that these teachings were actually given to the pharaohs. And I want to give everyone an opportunity to get involved in the teaching and to be aware of the teaching and to have access to the teaching if they would like to. But of necessity, we would have to close the lectures at the end of next class. And I think you can understand why, because of the nature of these profound teachings, which we are calling for now the Book of Am Duat, the ancient Egyptian sacred text of what is in the Netherworld. So tonight we'll do a brief review of what we did the last time, and then we'll go forward with some more fundamental issues that are necessary to understand this teaching, and then we'll do a brief introduction to the opening line of the text. So we'll try to get it all in. So recall the last time we started with the copyright information, and we started actually with the universe. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that tonight, but from a mythological point of view. The last time we spoke about it in a historical point of view, and from the point of view of modern science, the deposit of the Big Bang and the measuring of the age of the universe and all of that. And what we did was we tracked the movement of the first peoples. Science has given us the knowledge that these human beings came to the earth about 3 billion, 2.8 million years ago. And we tracked their movement from the area of Africa that was referred to by the Greeks as Ethiopia. The modern Ethiopia is around here, but we're talking about the ancient Ethiopia, which are in this area. And we spoke about the migration from Ethiopia to Egypt proper along the banks of the Nile River. And the reason why we're doing this is so that we can have a cultural context in which to study the teachings. Like they're not just dropped out from nowhere, that there's a cultural context behind it. And we know of this migration because the ancient Egyptians told Theodorus Siculus when he went to Egypt to study as a historian, it was told to him that of this migration of these people. And they told him that the leader of this migratory group was Asar, the divinity Asar. And I put up an interesting quote to try to give some impetus that what we're studying is not hocus pocus, mumbo jumbo, but that even a Roman Catholic priest acknowledged the depth and profundity of ancient Egyptian African religion as a spiritual concept. Then we spoke about Napoleon coming into Egypt and his battle with the Ottoman Empire soldiers. So when he came into Egypt, the city of Anu, which is modern day Cairo, was already abandoned. As you can see in this colorful photograph in the background, they have the pyramids in the background. And why this is significant is because he brought in a slew of European scholars that started the excavations and the unearthing of the monuments that we go back to now and we study and so forth. And I spoke about briefly about a tablet, stone tablet, that's called the Rosetta Stone. And here it is. It's one single stone, but I sliced it in the three parts in which it is. So this is something that I'm adding just to something nice to add to the lecture to get more context. So what happened was a French scholar became aware of this tablet because it was found by one of the soldiers, Napoleon's soldiers, and taken to France. And this was before the hieroglyphs could be read in modern times. And what they did was they studied, on this one tablet had three different types of writing. It had the hieroglyphs, it has Demotic, which Demotic is it's sort of a development of hieratic, which is a cursive form of the hieroglyphs. And they had Greek, and at that time people could still read the Greek. So he compared the hieroglyphs with the Greek, cross-checked with the Demotic and so forth, and came up with an alphabet, and that's how the modern scholars started out reading the hieroglyphs. And then we spoke about Manetho, priest Manetho, who was commissioned to do a rendering of ancient Egyptian history. And he spoke of the rulership of Egypt by the divinities and how many years they actually ruled. And he was saying that the first ruler, the first king to sit on the throne was Ptah, followed by Geb, Asar, Aset, and Horus. And that they ruled for a very long time. He added all up along with the demigods and the spirits of the deceased, and it came out to about 18,762 years. So for what that means from a historical point of view was that the migration from Ethiopia to modern day Egypt occurred a very long time ago. And there have been other renderings A quote here from the book by Dr. Muat Ashby, African Origins, detailed 36,620 years before the unification of the dynasty, the unification of the empire. So at least 36,000 years before 5,000 BCE, 5,500 BCE, the migration took place. It's a very long time. And I added this photo of a pre-dynastic goddess figurine that is found in the Brooklyn Museum. If you go there, I think they still have it there. I went there, I saw it, and I took this picture of it. So we're talking about a philosophy. So what this means for our study is that the Amduat text is a development in ancient Egyptian literature that started a very long time ago with the oral tradition. And then during the dynastic period, the sages decided, they made a decision to start the pyramid text, start writing the inscriptions down, the teachings down, instead of having it purely as an oral tradition. That was a major development in Egyptian civilization, because now we can go back and we can study the teachings and the writings, and if they were never codified, we would not be able to do that, and it would all be lost. So recall that the Great Sphinx has been dated to 5,500 BCE, and how we know that is that these undulations, the Sphinx actually sits in a pit, and the pit on the walls of the pit has undulations, and it was discovered by a geologist, Robert Schott, or Scott, something like that is how you pronounce his name. Determined that these undulations were produced by water. And the last time that it rained in sufficient amounts to create these undulations in the rock was around 10,500 BCE. However, to make these undulations in solid rock, the rains have to have been going on for a very long time. So, because you're making indentations in rock. So that's lots of water over a very long time. So say that to say that the ancient Egyptian civilization is enormously old, and we keep pushing back the date with new discoveries. Another major development was when Narmer came to unify the empire into two empires, two areas coming together to form one empire. For example, the North and the South comes together to form the United States of America. Similarly, not with the same philosophical ideation, but the Upper and Lower Egypt came together to form a single empire, and it was performed by this pharaoh, Narmer. And around 5000 BCE, we saw that the first writings in human history, religious writings, were done in what are called, now these, recall, this is very important, because you can be, you don't want to be like the masses of people. You want to have some refined understanding of what is going on. These pyramids, these are actually pyramids that these writings were inscribed on. And these, let's see. Hold one moment, please. Yes, you don't want to be like everybody else. These pyramids, as you can see, if you look closely, you can see that there are inscriptions from the bottom of the wall to the end of the top of the wall, but there are no inscriptions on the roof. The roof has stars on it, which represents the starry system, the night sky, the body of the goddess Nut. As you can see, the V shape of the top of the ceiling, and you'll see that again this evening. These pyramids are small pyramids. They're not as tall as the Great Pyramids at the one of Giza, and pyramids in other areas that are very large. The pyramid of Sneferu, the Bent Pyramid, those pyramids, those large, massive ones, have no writings, and they're not burial places for kings. The smaller ones where you have writings, those are burial places for kings. So when you hear on the History Channel that the Great Pyramid was made for the pharaoh, or whoever the pharaoh was, that is not accurate. These large pyramids are actually cosmic machines. They're temples where certain meditation exercises and practices were performed by the initiates. And there is a sarcophagus in there, but that sarcophagus was not put in there for the burial of a king. So think about what that means as far as spiritual practice. There's a sarcophagus in there, but it's not for the burial of a king. So what were the initiates? What were the priests and priestesses doing in there? That's the key. Okay, sir, can you please mute your device? Okay. Lenny, can you mute your device? That would be appreciated. Set and a half, you're online? Okay, so these pyramids are not for kings. So you can imagine what was going on there in ancient times. And during 5000 BC, and these pyramids where you have the kings buried, and you go in there, if you turn around and you look, we're looking towards the east. If you turn around and look towards the west, you see where the sarcophagus is. And there's not a lot of room between the sarcophagus and the walls. I think I have a picture of this sarcophagus in these pyramids. I'll try to pull it up and show it to you. And this is called the Step Pyramid, which is built, and this one is referred to as the first stone megalithic structure in human history. And it's in the same area as these pyramids built around the same time. And around 4000 BCE, the Great Pyramids. Then you have the coffin text coming right after, which is a developmental stage in the literature of the ancient Egyptian civilization. And for our study, these writings on the walls, followed by the papyrus text, these writings on the walls have a precedent from the pyramid text. But these are in more tube-like structures that are called tombs, but they're actually chapel tombs where kings were buried. So the Amduat text being placed on the wall of burial places for pharaohs has its precedence in what is referred to as the pyramid text. It doesn't say the same thing, it's not the same book, but the mode of presentation, there's a precedence. So what is the purpose of this teaching? Truth. What is the purpose of this teaching? Truth. So keep that in mind. Then we spoke about the Valley of the Kings, where you have a West Valley and the East Valley. Right in the same area you have the Valley of the Queens. Then you have the Workers' Village, where the people who built the Valley of the Kings tombs lived. It's posited that this neighborhood, which I've been in, I have pictures of this ancient Egyptian neighborhood, which is still there in a dilapidated condition, but it's still there. You can still go and walk in the cul-de-sac and down the streets and so forth. And it's said that the workers who lived here were the ones who excavated and built the Valley of the Kings in ancient times. And this is the actual driveway. They put a street before all of this was obviously just a road. They put a street with pavement now in modern times, and these niches are the entrances to the various tombs. And here the niches and walkways from another angle. This is in the reception area of the Valley of the Kings, where tourists go now. There's a model of the whole valley, and these ticks or thumbtack looking structures are the designations where the tombs are, and all of this represents the mountain and so forth. From another angle, and they cleverly built how it looks underground, so you can actually see how the tombs are constructed underground. These are models, floor diagrams of how the tombs look. And a feature here, this walkway into the tomb is a straight line walk into, and in some of them you have side rooms. This railing and this wood platform is all modern construction. This wasn't there before. There are so many tourists go in there that they had to put the walkway to preserve the floor and also to make it easier for people to walk in and out. You have so many people walking in there that they start to make indentations in the rock on the floor. So, and it's also easier if you have this kind of structure, wood flooring with railings that you can hold on to while you walk in there and so forth. And we spoke a little bit about the Amduat modalities. We have the sarcophagi in line drawing form on papyrus paper and in the tombs themselves. And here we are. So last time I was explaining that this is the sarcophagus, and you see all of this is modern construction inside the tomb to make it easier for people to walk around. And this is the tall sarcophagi, the Amduat text on the wall, and another text on the ceiling, the day and night text. And this is kind of an innovation that is used. You see this kind of innovation in the tomb of Seti I as well. with the what is referred to as a day and night text on the ceiling, because it has the goddess Nut on the ceiling being held up by Shu. You're going to see more about that tonight. And the Am Duat on the wall surrounding the sarcophagus. So this is a whole metaphysical exercise that's going on here. So it's not merely putting a sarcophagus and a tomb with writings on the wall. It is designed in a metaphysical manner. This kind of architecture is a synthesis of the teaching of the Netherworld, but in an expanded form. And what this architecture does is that it relates the teaching. So in other words, the tomb becomes the teaching. And you download all of this into you. And you can express this in super mundane meditative states. And as you can see, the sarcophagus in this area is surrounded by certain texts, and these texts become you commonly hear them referred to as the Netherworld guides, which in a sense is true. So that can be accepted. But what are they? Are the psychodynamic expressions of the subconscious and unconscious mind as the personality that travels through the inner worlds of the mind to become reborn as the illuminated sun, which is to become one with the divine, and then you express as the ultimate reality and the figmentation of creation, of nature. The fragmentation, meaning the parts of nature and creation, you express as that. As you have joined yourself, become one with the underlying reality of things. So that's what we're going to talk about during these lectures. Now, some more fundamental teachings to know before we actually go into the hieroglyphic text itself. So, where did our teachings come from? The provenance of our teachings. The Shetout Neter, as you see here. Shetout Neter. Shetout Neter, which is the hieroglyphic form of these two words, is the name of the ancient Egyptian religion. And it is told to us that we have a lineage of how this tradition was passed on from ancient times till now. And one of our principal declarations, the followers, the Shemsu of the teachings, says that Tua, Em Shemsu, and Nebuchadnezzar, SEHU, and Keperu. I am one of those followers of Nebuchadnezzar. Nebuchadnezzar is the principal deity. We'll leave it at that for now. In accordance with the writings of Lord Keperu. So why would the hieroglyphic text tell us that the followers of the tradition are following Nebuchadnezzar in accordance with the writings of Lord Keperu? Because it is told to us that the founder of ancient Egyptian religion is Khepera, or Keperu, the beetle-faced divinity. the divinity that I'm named after, Kepera. And it is told to us that Kepera is the founder of Shetaut Neter. When Asar brought the tradition to Egypt, he did so. What he did was he brought Kepera's philosophy to Egypt, and you're going to see how he could have done that now. Kepera then passed these teachings on to Lord Jehuti. And Jehuti is the ibis-headed divinity. And you're going to see why the divinities have these forms in a moment. So don't let the animal-headed forms cause consternation or anxiety or confusion or anything like that. The ibis-headed divinity Jehuti, he wrote down the teachings, he codified them. And so he codified Kepera's philosophy, and Jehuti then passed on those teachings to Heteru. Heteru, who infused those teachings with power, with life force, and with the capacity to dispel of fundamental ignorance, with her burning eye of destruction, meaning she destroys that which binds the soul to the world. She brings the fiery eye of wisdom to the teaching. She passed on those teachings to Aset and Asar. And you're going to see how these two are related. Aset infused those teachings with intuition and with wisdom. And Asar took those teachings and designed the theurgy, the practice, the temple outline, the structure, the worship process, the graduated process of stages of spiritual evolution. He designed Egypt. So when he traveled to Egypt from Ethiopia, he took Kepera's philosophy and he created the system of the mysticism and practice of the science of the gods and goddesses. They, in turn, Aset and Asar, who are partners, in turn gave those teachings to Horus, to Heru, who, as you've seen, was one of the early kings of Egypt. And Heru then took those teachings and applied them to his own spiritual process, and he sublimated his egoistic notions, the dominance of the ego within himself. He sublimated that. And so he proved the premise of the teaching. And he passed those teachings on to the priests and the priestesses. Then the priests and the priestesses passed that teaching on to the other priests and priestesses in a graduated form, and also to the common folk. So we don't have a lineage, a physical, biological lineage of because of a flesh human being to another flesh human being, and it's in the same family. We have a spiritual tradition, is that the divinities are the ones that pass on the teaching. And that occurs within you as well. When you practice the teaching, yes, you receive instruction and so forth, but when you're going through the spiritual process, is the Neteru, the gods and goddesses, that are operating internally within you. What you're given is the keys and the clues to activate that internal operation that occurs within you. If you relate this to the Am Duat text, you would see what we're talking about, the profundity of what we're getting into. Neteru is the Kemetic term that means gods and goddesses, and it's denoted as multiple flags, or you can see you can have a flag with 3 lines, and that means plural, Neteru, and so forth. And then we have other ways in which Neteru are written. Duau, Shetar Aru, the hidden forms. And what we have is the Neteru are all forms of nature, energy patterns that exist in the universe, and the 3 planes of existence, the gods and goddesses. And what we have is a system of a high divinity. So Ra is a high divinity. Amun is a high divinity, Ptah, and they have a company of gods and goddesses below them. And what this is referred to as henotheism. You have the one divinity that manifests as the many. Neter manifests as Neteru. Neter is the single divine principle from which all the other gods and goddesses come from. And that is referred to as henotheism. In ancient Egyptian religion, you also have absolute monism. You have monism, which relates that everything in creation has a soul, and that soul is divine. Absolute monism means that there is nothing but God. There is divinity and nothing else. Everything else is the imagination. It's figmentation of the mind. And you have various forms of divinities. We have what are called anthropomorphic divinities. Those are divinities in human form. The Asar, with its full human form, the face of a male and the body of a male figure. He holds special implements, the crook and the flail. We'll talk more about that. He has a menat necklace, and he has an atef crown and his beard. Then you have what are referred to as zoomorphic divinities. This zoomorphic means that the divinity is in animal form. So you have human form divinities and animal form divinities. Now what that means, how a divinity is presented, is like a philosophical package. That presentation is saying something about the philosophy behind it. So, for example, this is a composite divinity. This is Jehuti with the ibis head, but the body of a male figure. And the reason why they do this with the composite divinities and the zoomorphic divinities is so that your mind doesn't get attached to the form. What you're trying to do is understand the principle of the divinity. But if all your divinities are male or female presentations, then you're going to get caught in form. You will not go to the principle or the idea behind the divinity. So they cleverly knew that the mind becomes attached to human form, and a person like that will not be able to go deeper to try to understand the principle behind the form. So they have to compose the divinities in such a way to keep a separation between attachment and inquiry. So if you see something like this, it causes you to inquire. If you have a pure perception of a qualified aspirant, you're going to want to know, well, what does the Ankh mean? What does the head mean? In this, what does the posture mean? We're going to try to figure out what the form is trying to convey, as opposed to seeing the form as a divinity itself. And here is a composite. This is Sekhmet, a female divinity. So you have divinities that sit crouched. You have divinities that stand. You see them standing. You see them crouched, and you see them also sitting. These are the various forms in which the divinities are presented. Now recall that we discussed the creation of the universe from more of a scientific perspective the last time, and a historical perspective. So we're going to go very briefly, very quickly, to a mythological, the ancient Egyptian mythological rendition of how the universe came into being. So Nebuchadnezzar, words of Nebuchadnezzar. You've seen that before in this lecture just a moment ago. And Nebuchadnezzar means all-encompassing divinity. So Nebuchadnezzar is everywhere and all things at the same time, basically. And so Nebuchadnezzar had a conversation. Nebuchadnezzar uttered some words. And Nebuchadnezzar says that I came into being as Kepeda and transformed into many forms which came forth from my mouth. What he's saying here is that he transformed into Kepeda and he uttered his own name, and the universe came into being. So the universe is existent because of sound vibration. Heaven and earth was not created. Animals and reptiles were not created as yet. I raised them out of the primordial ocean. The primordial ocean is, you can think of it as a vast sea of undifferentiated consciousness, meaning there's no differentiation. There are no plants, there are no animals, there are no planets, there are no forms. And so what Nebuchadnezzar is saying is that I brought these elements and I raised them out of the primordial ocean. So when he uttered his sound, it rippled the primordial ocean, and the primordial ocean started to vibrate. And that vibration caused the heavens to come into being, the earth, the animals, the plants, and everything like that. So from this stillness comes all manner of creation. I did not have a place to stand. I was strong in my heart. This means that the creation of the universe is composed not only of sound vibration, but of mentation, of mental energy. So anything that you are seeing is composed of and vibratory. For example, your frequency waves, your X-rays have a certain vibration, and rocks have a certain vibration. Obviously, the higher frequency radio waves has a higher vibration than how the rock is vibrating. We know a rock is vibrating because it's composed of atoms, and what circles the center of the atom is a proton, but it's vibrating and moving so slowly that the rock is very dense. Similarly, the atoms of the radio waves are vibrating at a faster rate. So they're at a higher frequency, a higher vibratory rate. And everything in creation is like that. What happens when you add heat to water? The molecules of the water start to heat up and you get steam. You have a different kind of form, but it comes out of the water. Similarly, the vibrations, the various vibrations of the utterance of Nebuchadnezzar's name, Kepeda uttering his name, Nebuchadnezzar as Kepeda uttering his name, caused the primordial ocean to ripple and vibrate, and creation came into existence. I founded Shu and made all of the attributes of all of the gods and goddesses. I was alone. Not yet had I evacuated Shu, so not yet had space and ether come into existence. What he's saying is that this act of creation was brought forth before there was anything. There was no space, there was no land, there was no sea, there was no place to stand, no place to sit, and that deity had to act alone, meaning the deity acted on himself. So the primordial ocean is an aspect of the all-encompassing deity. The primordial ocean, the Noon, is an aspect of Nebuchadnezzar. No other worked with me. I laid the foundation in my own heart, the reasoning consciousness and intention, will, became many transformations, meaning the turning of the primordial ocean, what we call the Noon, into many and various forms. And it says here, Nu became many forms. Through Kerpata, there were many births and transformations. I copulated with myself, meaning it was a self-generating process. So the primordial ocean, undifferentiated consciousness, no forms. And Kerpata rose out of that. And then we have Ma'at, Jehuti, and Sekhmet. And they are not the creation itself. They are the principles that allow creation to exist, to be maintained. Ma'at represents the power of orderliness and coagulation, meaning putting things together, and orderliness in a way that causes creation to have a certain synchronicity and precision. So, for example, the sun is a certain distance away from the earth. If the sun moves 1 mile closer to the earth will not be able to survive, will not be able to live here. But we're bringing the earth closer to the sun anyway. We're bringing the sun closer to the earth anyway by climate change. But you know what I mean. From the perspective of distance, it is such a precise area, such a precise configuration that life can be maintained on the earth. And so that's Ma'at. And she puts blood in your veins instead of water. She separates seawater and fresh water. So she separates the lakes from the oceans. But she causes the evaporation of ocean into the air that comes back down as water. She performs all of that magic, all of that synchronicity. Jehuti is the power of mind, the power of meditation that causes this creation to be projected, as it were, on a screen of consciousness. And Sekhmet, she infuses creation with life force energy. So she causes your body to move because she's the life forces that flows through your nervous system. She causes the plants to grow. Well, how Ma'at causes the electromagnetic wave particles from the sun to be captured by the chloroplast aspect of the cell and turn into chlorophyll, and you can juice that and drink it for energy. Sekhmet is the life force energy, and she's the energy that causes that transformation of electromagnetic energy into chlorophyll in a chloroplast segment of the cell. That's just one example. All of the processes of creation, she's the energy and power behind it. And Ma'at is the orderly workings of that, whatever that principle is, of that operation is in creation. So Shu and Tefnut. Shu is the space and the ether. But for now, let's say Shu is a space. So without space, there can be no time. Time and space are inextricably linked. So if there is no shu, there can be no passage of time. And if there is no time, there can be no space as well. And Tefnut. And Tefnut is the life force that is contained within the air and space. Geb and Nut. Geb is the earth, and Nut is the heavens. And they were once, Geb and Nut were once together in amorous embrace. They were stuck together. So if they're stuck together, there is no space. Nothing can move, nothing can happen. Shu, who is here, the same Shu here, he separated Geb and Nut. And you see these ticks under Nut's body. This is the hieroglyphic symbol that means support. And so Shu separated Geb and Nut. Here's Geb on the ground, the earth, and here's Nut, the heavens. And Shu, being space, separates them. And Tefnut is within Shu. She's the power that allows space to be existent. Space actually is an object. So without her, that object cannot exist. And all of these three are ancient, these are Egyptian yoga poses as well. So, from Geb and Nut, remember they were together. So when they separated, Nut became pregnant and she gave birth to Asar and the Set. And Set and Nebuchadnezzar and Heru. Asar, now these four, Tefnut, Shu, Nut, and Geb, are the cosmic divinities. These are the cosmic deities. Earth, heaven, space, life force. These divinities are the terrestrial divinities, and they represent aspects of human consciousness. So Aset represents intuitional wisdom and of the knowledge of self. Asar represents soul. Nebuchadnezzar represents mortality, death, and the propensity for death and decay. And Set represents ego. Heru represents the spiritual aspiration, that which is born within you, that causes you to come to a lecture like this, to seek spiritual enlightenment, the spiritual fulfillment, spiritual advancement, to take on the battle of life, which is to sublimate the ego. Asar and Aset together has a son, and Asar and Nebuchadnezzar together have a son. I know what you're going to think. Asar and Aset had Heru. In the Assyrian resurrection myth, but we can't get into all of that right now. And Asar and Nebuchadnezzar also had a son, and his name is Anpu. And recall, just looking at this on face value, you're saying, well, Asar was adulterous. I thought his wife was a Set, and he goes and he has a child with Nebuchadnezzar. But that would be a misreading of the myth. What's actually going on here is that these are elements of the human psyche that's interacting with each other, that's bringing forth a certain result. So when wisdom and soul come together, a spiritual aspiration is born within the human heart. When soul and death and decay comes together, then spiritual discernment is born, which is Anpu, which is to know the real from the unreal. Asar represents the real, the spirit, soul. And Nebuchadnezzar represents that which is illusory, that which is subject to dissolution. So when these come together, the capacity to discern soul from illusoriness is born within the human heart, is born within your psyche, your mind. When your wisdom capacity contacts soul, spiritual aspiration is born within your heart. You start to strive for spiritual evolution. Horus has 4 sons. They're also known as the sons of Asar and the grandchildren of Asar at the same time. Meseti, Happy, Duamatep, Ketsunu. But that's going in a different area. But just so you can see how all of the divinities are actually interrelated. And it's a system of understanding the human psyche. And so we need to, as aspirants and students of this teaching, that's how you are to go into the Am Duat text, with that kind of understanding. That what we're studying is actually the powers, the propensities, the potentials of your own human mind. That's what's going on. So we're not looking at these divinities as anything outside of yourself. So then you might say, well, then why worship them? Because when you worship them, you generate their power within yourself, and you start to awaken these potentialities, these cosmic and metaphysical potentialities within your own mind. And then you are able to employ these principles of your personality at will. So you have to bring these forces under your control within you. So you have to worship them. And in a deep mystical way, they start to work in your favor. In day-to-day life I'm talking about. They start to arrange the world for your spiritual benefit through your own Aryu, your own life. Aryu means karma. So when you worship them, you develop positive Aryu, positive karma, and then the world starts to become shaped through your own individual experience in a way that causes you to grow spiritually until you achieve higher planes of consciousness and beyond. Set is the ego, who is originally the partner of Nebuchadnezzar, but they don't bring forth anything. The ego doesn't bring forth anything because he's actually impotent, and that's what happens to the human personality. The more egoistic you are, the more impotent you become. So you become frustrated with life and frustrated with yourself as a human being and your failures. And you can see that happening right now if you're paying attention. You know what I mean? The politics of the world. The structured path to Nahas. Nahas is the ancient Egyptian word that means spiritual enlightenment. And we have a threefold process. You have the myth. The myth is a storytelling. So here the storyteller is writing and telling the myth. So we spoke a little bit about some mythological principles, but I didn't tell you the myth in full because it'll take way too long. But I just gave you some hints to look out for, and we'll discuss those in more detail as we go along. So the myth, there's a storytelling. The second aspect of the religious process is the ritual. And the ritual is a mythic performance. What that means is that you take the myth and the ritual is enacting the myth. You're taking the myth and you're acting it out. You're dressing like the divinity. You're performing the part of the divinity. And what that does is that you start to feel and act like the deity. A good example of this is the actor. I can't recall his name right now. What's his name? Can't recall his name. but I recall what he said. He's the actor who in the movie, the Gandhi movie, the Ben Kingsley, who acted as Gandhi in the movie Gandhi. And they asked him, they were given an interview, and they asked him, well, what was it like to act as Gandhi? And it seemed as if you really got into the part. And he said there were certain parts when he was acting as Gandhi that he lost his identification with himself as Ben Kingsley. In his relationship to himself, that he was no longer Ben Kingsley, that he had become Gandhi in his feelings, in his thought patterns, in his belief, in his ideas, in his philosophy of life. And he said, in a way, it was not something that he expected. And this is what happens when you act like the divinities, when you move like them, is that you take on their power, but you take on their feeling, you take on their energy, you start moving and acting, and in that way you get to realize those divinities on richer and deeper levels within yourself. So in other words, the ritual is helping you to transform yourself into a deity. Right? You say it all the time. We are gods and goddesses, but what exactly does that mean? Just because you're born a certain way, you're a god or a goddess? No, you have to act like the divinity, feel like the divinity, have the same philosophical and world outlook as the divinity. And that world outlook is that you are indeed intrinsically that divinity, but you are something higher than even that as well. As all of the divinities, recall, come from the netter. And so all of the divinities lead you back to the netter. You discover yourself as one with the single principle of all creation. Mysticism is the third aspect, and that is the actualization. Actualization in this manner, what I'm saying here, is that you take this ritual and you start to do certain processes, such as meditation, and you start to develop super mundane experiences regarding the myth, regarding the ritual. So in other words, it starts to become actual and not an idea, and not simply a philosophical premise. And then you go and if you continue with this process of mysticism, what eventually occurs for the serious spiritual aspirant is that you attain what is commonly referred to as spiritual enlightenment. And that's what nahas means, to become free of the bonds of the ego and conceptual ideation of the world. You become free of conceptualization, and you discover yourself as the essential principle of all creation and beyond. So you can have an actualization of exploration into the netherworld, but that is to lead you to something else. That is to lead you to break down the barriers between you and spirit soul. Okay? I organized the translation of the text is I did a transliteration. So here's the term shataut netter. The yellow is a transliteration, and that means just taking these symbols and putting them into English letters, but with the pronunciation of the Egyptian, as close as we can get. Then the translation is taking those letters and writing them in English words, and then taking those letters and writing out the philosophical premise of what is meant in the translation and transliteration. And you'll see as we go forward. And this is what we're going to be getting into. It's called a Sebayit. Sebayit means written philosophical teaching. And so the Amduat text is a Sebayit, a written philosophical teaching about the nature of the hidden psyche. And so we'll be doing its philosophy and epistemology, which is the study and the origin of the study of knowledge. So the knowledge of the Duat, the study of the knowledge of the Netherworld. Here is the ceiling of the temple of Dendera, and this is the goddess Nut. You go there to the temple, you can see it now. And all of this was covered in black soot, but some well-meaning and dedicated people cleaned it, and now you can see it nicely. Here's Goddess Nut. She's bent over like in the V. And you can see, here's her head, and you can see the undulations under her body. Her body is the Nun. And the Nun is not somewhere in another dimension. The Nun is right here, right now. We are operating, working through the Nun. And things rise out of the Nun and dissolve into the Nun. This computer is going to dissolve back into the Nun at one time. If they don't mummify your body is going to disintegrate back into the Nun of undifferentiated consciousness. Here's her head, and in the evening, and here, as you can see closely, this is a sun disk, and what she's doing is she's eating raw. She's taking raw into her mouth in the evening. So her mouth is the western horizon, the west. But in her body, that would be the east. And so Ra travels through her body during the evening, during the night, and then she gives birth to him. He comes out of her vagina in the morning, and he comes out of her vagina, and he has these plumes, these lotus plumes, where he's shining on Heteru. And there's a whole mysticism behind this. The idea is that Ra is being eaten in the evening, and he's being birthed in the morning. And so her body, the inside of her body, is the Netherworld, is the Duat. So we're going to be studying inside, we're going to be studying her body, but within her. And here's the Temple of Dendera, where this is found. And when Egyptologists first found it, there was a lot of sand, and they had to clean it out and so forth. And this is how it looks now. It's still a beautiful temple. It was built in the Ptolemaic period, which is a late period, but on a site where a more ancient temple stood. So it's an ancient Egyptian temple built on the architectural design of Imhotep in this area where a much older temple was built during the Ptolemaic period. And here we are. Opening attestation of the Shetout Amduat. Shetout Amduat. Shetout Amduat. And this is the determinative that means house. So we're going somewhere, we're going into the house, going into the home, going into the area, is what it's saying. In other words, a space, kind of a spacious area. Okay, I'm back. Okay. I don't want to give it away. Okay. So we're in the physical world has its construction, has its architecture. Similarly, the Am Duat has its construction, has its architecture. Mysteries, Shetau, Am, of who is in the Duat. And this is the very first opening line. Remember the yellow transliteration, the white translation, and the beige, the philosophical premise. So, SEHU, and At, Amen, Shekemu, Bau, Neteru, Kebit, to Akhu. Writings, inscriptions, palace, hidden, powerful life forces, souls, gods and goddesses, silhouette, shining spirits. So the first line starts out by telling us that the Amduat text are the writings and inscriptions within the hidden palace concerning attributable factors related to the powerful life forces of souls, the gods and goddesses, and the delineable forms of the shining spirits. So we're going to be studying the writings, inscriptions of that which is hidden and inscrutable for normal human senses. You can't see right now and see the Duat except if you're at a certain level. And the powerful life forces of the souls that exist there. The souls of the ones who have become transformed into the higher spiritual beings through higher spiritual attainment. The Kebit is a special or a particular aspect of the human personality. You have 9 parts of your personality. And one of the 9 parts is called the Kebit. And the Kebit is like a sunshade. And the Ak shines on the sunshade, and an outline is developed. And that outline is the outline of your personality, the various propensities and capacities of your personality related to the lower aspects, the mind, the name, the physical body, and so forth. And so what this is telling us is that these are delineable forms of the shining spirit. So we're going to be discussing these forms that become magnified through the Akh. So what that means is that the Akh produces higher cosmic forms, because that Akh is purified, and that Akh is delineable. That Akh is accessible. And so we're going to talk more about that. But basically what it's saying is that the forms that are produced by the Akh, that are the higher forms, that is a subject of discussion. That is a subject of what we're going to be doing, that we're going to be talking about. They're not talking about the outline of the forms of egoism, unrighteousness, untruth. We're talking about the outline of the higher principles. Horn of Amentet and Amentet Pau Sima Ger Dua Amentet Reku Rek. Make beginning Amentet horizon and union darkness netherworld horizon Amentet knowledge. And why are we going to do this? Why are we going to go through the writings and inscriptions within the hidden palace concerning attributable factors related to powerful life forces of souls, the gods and goddesses, and delineable forms of the shining spirits? It is to make union with the vast wisdom and knowledge of the inscrutable darkness of the netherworld, Amentet, from the beginning of the opening of Amentet, from one end of the horizon to the other end. The inscrutable darkness of the Amentet is the Amentet, meaning the Duat, is actually a divinity. So the principle of this teaching is to make union with the wisdom of that divinity through an understanding of its delineable forms and the gods and goddesses, the principles and the powerful forms that are in there. And so you have to make union with that from end to end, from Akhet to Akhet, from east to west. So you expand as yourself as the body of the Duat, the body of the netherworld. And that's all I'll say about that for now. And so to do this is the goddess Nut. And so you have to make yourself as Ra and allow yourself to be swallowed by her, so that you can travel into her body to discover these forms that hold the secrets and insights into the capacity to make sima, to make union with the inscrutable darkness, that which is impenetrable and unalterable. And so that will be our teaching for this evening. and we'll go forward with this. So next time we're going to discuss how it is to become involved in the weekly lectures and so forth. And so if you want to continue with this teaching, send me an email letting me know at sehuank@gmail.com, and we'll go forward. You'll be allowed into the class because we're going to close the class after next week. And then we're going to go forward and go through the text and all of that. Okay, so are there any brief questions? Okay, so if there aren't any questions, until we meet again next Friday. Makiru emba nepacher. Makiru emba nepacher. Makiru emba nepacher. Makiru emba nepacher. Have a wonderful evening until we meet each other again. Attack.
Do it.
Attack.